Hello, and welcome to the Mothers of All Crime. This is a podcast where we deep dive into mothers involved in infamous crimes and scandals. I'm Monica, and this is Krystal.
Welcome back to the Mothers of All Crime. This week we're going to be talking all about Myka Stauffer.
Yes. What a cute, on paper, well, I should probably start. What a cute little family. Like, they really dove into this influencer family life before the Stauffer family, before it became so popular. Like, they really were one of the first
Yeah, early days of
influence
YouTube.
mom families. Like,
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, Myka was doing it before she met James, before she got married, so um, this was clearly her project that she's been doing since like 2012, which is early for YouTube. I feel like now
Yeah.
it's so popular to do that, but at the time, kind of got in on the ground floor.
Oh, absolutely. And I think they were that family that everyone aspired. Like, everyone thinks they could be an influencer nowadays.
Mm,
And they really, quote, made it, I think. And with the
yeah,
fact that was the case is why they became so public and why Micah became someone's absolute favorite to absolutely hated. Like, she took a full 180 online.
yes. We're going to be talking mostly about the documentary that came out on Max called An Update on Our Family, which I have mixed feelings about. I didn't love the documentary, but I did follow this when it was happening, so I was interested in watching it, and I did learn things for sure, but I didn't think it was that good of a documentary. For Max, anyway. They usually have like really intense, like really a lot of information. And I do understand why some things could not be shared or really shouldn't have been even researched maybe by the documentary because it is about children and their privacy. But I just feel like it really centered a lot around that lady Hannah, which
Mhm.
she really didn't have anything to do with anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have mixed feelings. I definitely lean to not liking it because I
Okay.
feel like it was more of like other people's opinions of the family rather
Right.
than the family, things about the family. However, I will say Micah and James did refuse to participate. They tried reaching out and they never responded. So that is part of why they couldn't get any other information. And I think they had to take that
Right.
route. So my guess is like they probably put it in
For
production
sure.
and be like, oh, they'll totally be part of it. And then they were like, okay, now what? Pivot.
Yeah. I think that obviously if anyone in the Stauffer inner circle would have participated, it would have been more interesting. But I also understand why they and their immediate family and friends did not participate because it's not just James and Myka, but really nobody from their world participated. It was a lot of other YouTubers and fans and brands and stuff like that that didn't have a lot to do with the actual situation that made them infamous anyway.
Right. And only one of the fellow like family bloggers was willing to even talk about Micah. All the rest of them were like, be careful, don't say anything. I'm not going to comment. So there was this huge
Right.
fear of being canceled while this was being produced. So I see why they have that fear, and we're going to get into that. But it, I don't know. I don't think they had another option, but not the biggest fan.
Yeah.
It was an easy
So
watch, though. It
it
was definitely an easy watch. If someone wants something a little more lighthearted than what we normally talk about, it definitely was an easy thing to kind of listen to. I think that's the one positive that came from it.
yeah, it was an easy watch. It didn't need to be 3 episodes though. It definitely could have been a 1 hour documentary and I do think that would have been better. It
Yeah.
felt very dragged out.
Yeah. Well, let's get
But
into
anyway, we could
who Micah is.
So Myka was an only child who started vlogging in 2012 when she was a single mom of one child, and she was a nurse, and she met James, her husband, eventually on OkCupid. They got married really quickly, had a bunch of babies, shared lots and lots of information about birth, about home birth, about pregnancy, a lot of use of the word journey. I know that was
Yeah.
her job, but to me, it's oversharing.
Yeah. And I think there's pros and cons to that, right? So she was really one of the first and one of the most popular, like, mommy bloggers. And she really kind of opened a door into a conversation that a lot of people sometimes didn't talk about. So you're right. She had the normal, like, getting married, having babies. This is a great way to clean, like, the quote, stay at home mom stuff. But she also opened the door into conceiving and then losing the baby and how to dealing with that. So she really brought her fans into the life. And I think at that point, it wasn't something super talked about. So if you were sitting at home and you had just lost a child, you had someone that you, like, knew they were going through the same thing, so maybe you didn't feel alone. And when you're listening to this video of, like, oh, she feels like this, I feel like this, okay, that's normal. So I think her early stuff became so popular because it was very relatable to a lot of women.
Agreed. Yeah. And she was really, really open, even during a miscarriage, after a miscarriage, sharing a lot of details. And I do think it's an important topic. It's so, so common. And it's really under talked about, even now, but certainly at the time. And so, even though to me, it feels like maybe she should have taken more time to process and grieve on her own without sharing, I do understand that she was trying to provide content that's not already out there and also be really vulnerable. And YouTube wasn't what it is now at the time either, where she maybe also didn't know that she was going to have the audience that she did.
Mm-hmm.
And people are drawn to honesty and vulnerability, and it certainly worked. But part of the problem with being a family vlogger is that you need constant content, which
Mm-hmm.
means you need big announcements all of the time,
Yeah.
which is hard to keep up with.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you have those big announcements. She had many children, so there was always the baby posts and pregnancy posts, I should say, were very big clickers. So that's where they would get a lot of views, a lot of revenue. Like, they had that pulling in, that constant coming back. But then you had those, like you said, you have to have constant content. So it's just a daily life, a daily vlog, and it's them doing fun things to temper tantrums to activities, travel. So you have a little bit of it all, which I agree. I have mixed feelings about, because you have one hand, you're showing that, okay, not parenting isn't always perfect. It's not always bright and sparkly and fun. You sometimes want to pull your hair out and your kid's screaming and there's nothing you could do about it. And I think a lot of current mommy bloggers are much more like, I live this perfect shiny life. My family is like, look how amazing we are and how perfect we are. Nothing ever goes wrong. Versus these YouTube early day ones really were like, here's the guts and glory of my life. So but also, I feel weird about watching a 3-year-old's temper tantrum because they're like tired and they just want to go to bed. Like, it's an
Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword for sure.
definitely. And I think in the time that we are now, it's becoming much more of a concern, and there's starting to be laws put in place to protect children who are the main stars essentially of their families' YouTube channels or Instagrams, TikToks, whatever. Especially in California, there are now laws about how the children should be paid for that and how money has to be put in trust and it can't be touched by their parents, similar to a Coogan account that's set up for child actors. But it's certainly not something that's international or even national at this point. And I think that it starts out being about Myka, but videos just about Myka aren't grabbing the attention than the videos about all the kids are, the pregnancies, and the pregnancies who become people. Now, those people are the stars of the channel, and they aren't really consenting to that. And so things that they did in childhood are open for discussion on the internet, available to anyone to watch. And I don't know if that's really fair to kids.
Yeah. So as she grew in popularity, as more people were watching, she started getting brand deals, which goes with YouTube in general. So the more views you have, you can start becoming eligible for stuff and actually making money from this life. And she truly got to a point where they were raking in money. She had
Mm-hmm.
some really big names, from everything from like Danone yogurt to Walmart to Barbie to Fabletics. Like, she had, and honestly, all the ones that I could think of at some point popped up in this documentary. And
Mm-hmm.
it was huge. But every once in a while, there would be one that, like, I think we all watched these ads and we're like, we know that it's not entirely true, because you're like, here's an ad and I have to promote it somehow related to my channel. But every once in a while, I was like, oh, that was forced. Like, sometimes they were bad. And I think we'll get
For
into one
sure.
of them later. But they were making, I think at one point she said $50,000 at, like, regularly. Was it a month? I can't remember off the top of my head. But
I thought that
either
was per
way,
brand.
per brand,
I
either
mean,
way, ridiculous money.
at her height, she was getting millions of views, which
Right.
YouTube shares 50% of ad revenue with creators. So, I mean, the Earls family were saying something about making 7 cents every time someone watched their ads. So if millions of people are watching, like, it quickly extrapolates
Adds up.
into a very significant amount of money. I enjoyed that Fabletics was part of it, but I got the feeling that they kind of tricked Fabletics into even participating in the
Oh,
documentary, because
100%.
the second they brought up Myka, oh no, we're not talking about that.
Which, considering, I get it, because again, cancel
Yeah,
culture, they
right.
are, so it's like you have to buy directly from them. It's not like you can go to Target and buy it. So I get it. And they were talking about how moms are their number one, like, clientele, and their mommy bloggers are their number one source of ad income. Like, they don't have to pay
Hmm.
people to run ads for them, because, or nearly as much, because they just have these PR reps like Myka promoting it for them.
Exactly. It's definitely the way of the future when it comes to ads. Like, people aren't really watching commercials on cable TV at the level that they were in years previously. So now that everyone's scrolling on their phone or they're streaming, it makes more sense to pay influencers that are actually going to be seen by millions of people to do these advertisements. And Myka and her family were making very good money doing that. And her husband, James, had his own channel that was completely separate, all about cars and car maintenance and stuff. So I'm sure he had his own ads that were different, because he's not going to promote Fabletics on that channel. But I'm sure
Right.
there's
And,
other things
well,
that
also,
could be
his didn't
promoted.
have anything to do with the kids. So,
Right. It had nothing to do
if,
with the kids.
yeah, like, there was no point where, like, you went on and saw the kids. Like, all the kids stuff was related to her. So I think that's important to distinguish the two of them.
Definitely. And it's not an exaggeration to say that hers was extremely more successful and had a lot more views, had a lot more revenue. That was really what was supporting their family at that point, was Myka's channel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, there has to be a lot of announcements. And one of their
Mm-hmm.
announcements was that they decided, God guided her to this, which stuck out to me because it's the only time I really heard anything related to faith was that sentence. Um,
Mm.
to adopt a baby from China who was going to be their fourth child.
Hashtag big surprise.
I know. So they went through the World Association of Children and Parents, which has now rebranded itself, by the way. It's now called Holt
Mm.
International. I wonder
Hmm.
if that has a slight connection.
I
Um,
wonder.
but they basically went to, they claimed they did research to adopt in the United States and decided that they were going to do it through China. And one thing when it comes to adoption, and I
They
think we've
actually.
mentioned, ooh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that they said that social workers in the United States were pointing them towards adopting in China, which I guess is possible, but to me sounds very unlikely. It doesn't seem like advice that doesn't track as true for me. I do think if you're trying to do the fastest adoption possible, maybe that's the route to go, but I just that didn't hit me as true.
yeah, I could see it being not the whole truth, but partially the truth. So, like, if they were having a conversation like, hey, we want a child under the age of 3 and want to close adoption, we want no connection with, like, if they had all of these stipulations and they're like, and we want to do it as quick as possible, I could see them being like, well, then you need to go international because that's not an option here. Like, I could see,
Yeah.
I can't see them, I agree, being like, don't do it in the US, but I could see if they went in and were like, here are all of these stipulations, they could turn around and be like, that's not how this works in the US. So maybe you need to look internationally. That's my only thought.
Sure. It is possible. I mean, we saw the requirements for the adoption agency they went through in China, and I don't know actually what the requirements would be if they did it locally in Ohio. But I can't. I mean, it depends on what they're trying to do, though. If they're trying to do domestic infant adoption, that is going to be long waits typically. But if they were going to
Right.
do foster to adopt, foster care, stuff like that through Ohio, that would actually be way faster than adopting internationally. So I think maybe they just weren't willing to do that and they were looking for more of a direct match,
Right. And I
which,
don't think they want that like outside in, like they didn't want the children's parents popping in and being like,
mm,
"Hey," like I don't think they wanted that option or connection. I think they wanted to be like, "This is my baby, not anybody else's." Cuz she constantly was like, "My child is over there." Which I
yeah.
get, but even before she officially adopted them, it I don't know, it felt like she wanted it very closed. You know what I mean?
Yes. They had a lot of specific ideas about what this experience was supposed to be like. And I think even them picking out a name before having the child attached to it, to me, and announcing the name so publicly, and so you have to go with it even if it doesn't really fit the child that you end up adopting, like lets me think that this is not really child focused and it's more just focused on them and what they want from the experience, which I do think a lot of people go into adoption and even having babies, I mean, in any way, it's very parent focused, it's very adult focused, and it wasn't really about the kid, it was more about them is what it felt like to me. um,
I think it's tough with the name for sure because also it wasn't like he was an infant.
right.
He was old enough, he was a toddler, but like old enough to know what his name was, old enough to respond, like old enough where all of a sudden, if your name's Tim and someone's telling you your new name is Huxley, you now need to learn that that's what I'm supposed to respond to, which that's where I felt weird about it. Because like it'd be one thing if they changed his name and he was like 6 months old. Not that I'm saying it's
Sure.
right, but I'm like at least he didn't know what his name was yet, and it was just given to him, versus bringing a tiny human who already has a name and then changing it.
Yes. I totally agree with that, especially because this is a child that's probably not being raised in an English speaking environment. So he's going to have a language barrier. He's going to have to adjust to all new people. And now he also has a new name that's not even really picked out for him specifically. He was picked out to fit the name, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I will
Which,
say, trying to play devil's advocate, not necessarily my opinion, my only other thought though,
okay.
is if you're, because I'm trying to put myself in her situation, and it's hard because I agree with where we're standing, but I'm trying to
Hmm.
think of what her thought process was. And the only thing I could come up with is, if you have a baby, most parents pick out the name prior to them being born and just, this is the name. Sometimes they give birth and they change it because they just do, but most of the time you already have it picked out.
Sure.
So
Sure.
my again, she's adopting a toddler, which I don't think she was considered, but she very much, from the clips that we saw, was approaching this as like, I have a new baby coming in. And
Hmm. Yeah.
when I have a baby, like she was giving birth herself, I need to pick out a name. I need to make the announcement. Like she was handling it like he was an infant. And this is where the cringy ad thing came in, is there was like a detergent commercial she did that's supposed to smell like a newborn baby, that she basically was saying during the ad that she uses this with her adoptive son so she can smell like him like a baby during cuddles, because she didn't get that. Like, I think she was trying to erase the fact that he was a couple years old and it wasn't her. Like, is that making sense? Like, I'm
Yeah,
trying
it
to.
does. It does make sense, and I don't think that the Stauffers are the only people that approach adoption
Oh
this
no,
way. Where it's,
absolutely
but
not.
I don't think it's a very like I don't know, and I feel like it's a naive approach, as if like
Yes.
his life is really going to begin when he is with you guys, whereas he's actually a person already that's already had a life and experiences, and we're going to try to incorporate him into our family, and we want to make him feel really welcome in our family. It was more about, well, he's just going to be starting his life now. This is the true beginning.
Yeah.
And they seemed, because they did end up adopting Huxley from China. That's what they named him. I don't know what his name was prior. They
No idea.
really hyped it up, and they did come back with him, and they seemed genuinely extremely surprised at how bonded he had been with his foster family in China, which I
I
could
don't know if.
understand if you thought you were getting him from an orphanage, but he was not in
Yes.
an orphanage. He
And
was with a family.
right. And we don't necessarily know if they knew that either. Um,
Sure.
because I did try to do research on the company that they went through, and it doesn't really say. And it looks, from the way they were explaining it and the way it looks now, look night and day. So I can't really tell what they were doing. Um, but I wonder if like they just didn't know that that was the situation, because you could also see like they looked genuinely surprised, absolutely true, but they also looked really sad because like you, I think it registered to them that like they're taking him away from everything that he knew. And that is really sad and it's heartbreaking to watch. But like, I don't know. It was a weird level of emotions watching the video or the vlog of them picking him up.
Them picking him up and the early days afterwards, where they just, I mean, it's not unbelievable to me that this child would have a very difficult transition. Not to mention, this is a toddler who does not speak English that's going on an extremely long international flight, first flight ever, and then going to be living with strangers. They know about him because they've seen videos and pictures and been told a lot about him, but he doesn't know them. So I think
Right.
that their expectations were not reasonable. I think that they were very naive. But again, I don't think that that is so unique. I think there's a lot of people who think that all a child needs is love. And
Yeah.
obviously, children need love, but that's not all that they need. And I think that that is a little, it's oversimplifying it.
Yeah. And you could tell that it was traumatic for him. Like he had a lot of
Yeah.
process to do. And after a couple videos of stuff, they actually addressed it in one where they basically were like he's grieving the loss of what he had and we don't want to post that and it's his privacy. And then in that moment, I kind of went, okay, so it's okay to post your other children as they're going through stuff, but it's not okay if you're
Mm,
posting about him going through stuff. Like this is where the disparity started for me. And I get I like the idea of like, hey, this is a private thing. He is going through something. I like that. But it also felt fake. It felt like
yes.
they weren't it wasn't the content that they originally wanted, so they're like we're just going to ignore it.
That's how I felt too. I think that they were waiting for Huxley to get in line and to behave the way that they expected him to on the vlogs, which this is just my opinion, but I think that they thought that they were going to rescue a child from a miserable existence and he would just be so grateful and they would just have this instant bond. And even though they said they were very, very open to a child with disabilities, it seemed like they were pretty surprised that he had some disabilities.
Oh my god, right? So prior to them adopting him, you had to check a list of like what you'd be willing to consider and what you wouldn't be from a disability perspective. And we've talked about that before, I think. But they
Yeah.
were like, "Oh yeah, we checked 99% of them out of the 100." And when push came to shove and they're getting him evaluated, they were like, "Oh my god, he definitely has issues and we're getting a medical team and we're not going to post about it." And James started being the forefront. He posted a vlog of taking Huxley to the doctors and getting evaluated and all that. And people went after him, being like, why? Where's Myka? Why isn't Myka? And this is where I got angry at the fans for that one because
Mm,
you mean you're mad at him for being a dad? Like, it's not
exactly.
the mom's a like she doesn't have to do 100% of everything. Like that's ridiculous. You're sitting there being like, why isn't she at this doctor's appointment? I'm like, oh, probably because she's at home with the other 3 children. He's capable of taking his son to a doctor's appointment. Like I got so annoyed.
I mean the expectation that fathers aren't supposed to parent blows my mind every time and that it's such a shock that he would maybe be involved in their day-to-day
Right?
care or even know about their doctor's appointments.
How
I mean
dare
that
you?
always bothers me. And I do think that there is a lot of criticism for Myka and how she's handled everything. And there's not enough criticism for James when they clearly were making all these decisions together. They're
Yeah.
both responsible for
They
all of
both
their kids.
vlogged, they both posted, they both did it.
They both
And
monetize their children.
yes, they were both very involved. There's no question. And I think you're right. I
Definitely.
think he kind of got off scot free, honestly. And she took
Pretty much.
the most of it. And even their children started taking some of it. And he got off scot free. And I kind of annoys me. But we'll get to that.
Me too. Yeah, definitely. So, around the time that she was doing the baby detergent ads, which I agree with you, very bizarre. It's not like he was never a baby. You just didn't know him when he was a baby. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. All of it felt very creepy to me. Um like she was trying to infantilize him to give herself the experience that she wanted, which it's just I don't know. But she was teasing that they were maybe going to adopt again on the channel. And then that's when she did an extremely dramatic pregnancy reveal that they're pregnant again with baby number 5 this time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when she's kneeling on one knee, giving James a pacifier. It's all a lot.
In a
So
candlelit
instead of
room
adopting a
with
den,
like
yeah,
rose petals. It was so
I mean,
weird.
that would be strange to do for a first baby reveal, but for a 5th baby reveal, it's even weirder. I don't know. Again, felt extremely fake. Like, you're telling me that this is how he's genuinely finding out that you're pregnant? I just don't believe that.
But yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
he can smell the I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it was also
It looks
like
like it's so
it had to be different than the others, right? Because if she had normal ones up until then, like how creative can you be on your 5th baby at that point? So I think that was part of, like, she just felt like she needed the content. But around this time is really when she visibly started changing financially, where the fans started seeing the difference of where they started and the way that they were living now. And it was night and day.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly had a lot more money than they used to.
Yeah. And
yeah,
what I also thought was interesting, she started, like, obviously as they got more popular, she started doing interviews and things like that. And during one interview that they actually posted in the documentary, she was asked what her biggest failure was. And she started talking about the adoption, which you could tell the interviewer felt weird. He even said it after, because he was part of it. He was like, it was weird. Normally my responses are, I posted too much, I got burnt out. He's like, and you're telling me that adopting your child was your biggest failure.
Yeah, it kind of shows where her head was at the time.
And
That's what I
know
thought, anyway.
if she, like, interpreted it as, like, misjudgment, like, I didn't prepare myself accordingly, I misjudged the situation. Like, I'm hoping that that's how she took it. But the way the question was phrased, it just, the whole thing felt weird and icky.
My interpretation of her answer was that her biggest mistake, her biggest failure, was promoting it so much prior to the adoption and then not being able to deliver on the content. I mean, there was a lot of Huxley content, but I think that she wasn't able to present the narrative that she wanted to present. And so that, from a specifically from a blog point of view, that was a failure.
Yeah. And as content coming out, one that they did do on Huxley was his diagnosis. So they had him going to doctors, and he was found to have ADHD, autism. Oh my goodness, I didn't write down the third one. Another one. But because of those things, he most likely was never going to be fully potty trained. He probably was going to be struggling with language and partly mute. He was going to struggle with his emotions, his responses. And they really hit in the video. James's facial expressions looked honest. Hers looked forced.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big thing to process, an autism diagnosis. And I think that I understand why they were sharing those things, because they already were sharing way too much about their kids at the time, but it feels like very private medical information of a small child for them to be putting on their blog.
Just saying autism and, like, ADHD, I think would have been enough, but they started going into it and all of these other things. And I don't necessarily think that you should be announcing your child's disabilities online, but I do think those are common ones where if they just left it at that, people would know what it meant and could look into it. Or if you have a child who has those diagnoses, there's your relate. You know what I mean? But it was the overshare that just consistently you see over and over again. And I mean, there were sweet moments that we saw with the parents and the siblings. Like, it seemed overall like they got along, and he was very visible for about
It did seem like they were two and
two
a half years.
years. Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. They did a lot of work with him and filmed it, where they were working on words and talking and therapies that you can do at home, and that was a big part of his content. And he was certainly involved in the family, was with all of the siblings, with the parents, and he was a huge feature up until, I mean, they had the new baby. There's videos of Huxley with the new baby. And then about 2.5 years into him living with the Stauffers, he is not featured in any more videos. And people start commenting. And in these videos where people are commenting, the comments are starting to get removed,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big red flag in YouTube world. And then people are noticing that in their cars, Huxley's car seat is not there. And ultimately, all of the Huxley videos are removed.
Yeah. I think it's like the same thing as current moments when people post a TikTok and turn off the comments. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
my comparison, because in that period of time, YouTube was like the place to be. So if you're deleting all of the comments about your child who you had made content on, what are you hiding? Red flags everywhere.
Right. And they were posting a lot of other things. It just, Huxley's not in any of them. They're not talking about him. There's nothing about him.
Yeah, and she
And
started posting like things not even about her other children. Like, she started posting about like cleaning and back to other random things
right,
that are on brand,
which is
but not
not what people are there
necessarily
for.
right, not the children.
Mm-hmm. Right. So she posts a strange video where she has like some sort of filter on where it looks like there's diamonds in her eyes, saying, I know people are noticing Huxley, whatever. We're going to make an announcement as soon as we can. And that eventually comes out in a video titled An Update on Our Family. And that was May 26, 2020, where they're explaining, without really explaining, why Huxley is not there. They don't give a lot of details. They're suddenly very concerned about his privacy.
Right. And during that video, they kind of also point out like there were a lot of needs that he had that they weren't told. And again, my response to that was like, didn't you check off all the boxes though? So is that not, which part of it's
Right.
not true? Like, did
You
they tell you he had
exactly.
no issues, or did you not actually check all those boxes and once he was evaluated you had these issues? So
Yeah,
weird.
exactly. So they claimed that numerous medical professionals were telling them that Huxley needed more than the Stauffers could provide, and implied that these medical professionals found someone else, a new forever family for Huxley, and he has been removed from their family and now is with his new forever family, which does not ring true at all. There's no way a doctor or any medical professional was saying, you know what the solution is you give him up, give him away. That's
I
not
I can't I
doctor advice.
right? Like, what what? And then they
What?
kept saying like something happened for us to make this decision, but then never said what
Mm-hmm.
happened because like you said, we're very concerned about his privacy. Bull. You you guys got overwhelmed, you took on too much, you didn't think it was going to be hard, and realized this was difficult. And they tried to present themselves as these
Yeah, and
poor victims of misinformation. And guess what? That's not the internet did not respond well, nor should they have.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, this is terrible. This is cruel to me, is that this child who has already been displaced from his home is now being displaced again. Is he being renamed again? Like, this is just a lot of upheaval and abandonment for this poor child who has become accustomed to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that we don't know all of the details, and I feel like they were kind of implying that it was an unsafe situation, and that's possible. But I think that it's very easy to say that and not back it up and not have any specifics. And I think that the reality is they just were not as committed to Huxley as they were to their biological children, who they did not give away. Like, maybe
Yeah.
a new baby on top of an adopted toddler is a lot, but it's not like you're considering giving up the new baby.
Yeah, they definitely put in there that there was some kind of like mental health hint. But again, I think
Oh,
this is
yeah.
interpretation from production because, again, the staffers were not a part of this documentary. So I think the documentary was
Right.
trying to give the alternative option of like, hey, here's why some people might do this. And they did interview a family who had to give up a child because of behavioral issues that cause mental health. And it it doesn't make it okay, but I think that's what production was trying to do, which I don't necessarily, I don't know. I see why production did it. I just, it still makes me feel icky because you invest in your children, but when it comes hard, you don't. In all of her previous videos, this is my child. It's not a return. Like, she really pushed this idea and now she's backtracking. So why'd you do
Right.
it?
He was your child until it was not convenient and he was not performing. And now he's out.
Yeah. And then they also posted a clip talking about finances when it came to Huxley and Myka claiming that they had therapy that was costing $500. Uh, she said once a month and then she said half an hour. So like, it wasn't really clear. And that they were going to change to a $70 therapy while she had almost $1,000 of jewelry on. So again, it's
Right.
that you're downgrading something to give up helping the child for you to live a certain type of lifestyle. And I think the internet started not only turning on her, but started doing that investigation. So you mentioned the car seat wasn't there anymore. They started looking up videos and placing together, and all of a sudden they found one that had been uploaded, deleted, and re-uploaded, but it was shorter after the reload. And as
Yeah.
we know,
20 missing seconds.
once it's on the internet, you dig hard enough, it's still
It's
there
forever.
technically. And
Mm-hmm.
from the video, it looks like they had. So previously, Huxley was wearing a thumb guard that the
Mm-hmm.
Staffords claim that their dentist told them to put it on him because it was messing up his teeth because he was sucking on his thumb so much, which
That
I
may be
had never heard
possible.
of, but it could be very possible. It feels reasonable. But then in
Sure.
the video, he had duct tape around his hand where the thumb guard normally was.
Right. Which, very Ruby Frankie.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very, very, it's an extreme adhesive duct tape. Like, that is going to really hurt to take off. That is not good for your skin.
Oh, it's
And
awful. Yeah, particularly for
there's
like
no way.
sensitive small children.
Oh my God. Imagine having duct tape taped around your skin like that and then getting pulled off.
You know.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
But
And
again,
people hated that.
never
They got
addressed
tons of
it.
death threats.
Right. And they
Right.
started getting those death threats. And this is where we talked about the disparity of Myka was getting death threats. The children, her other children, were getting death threats. But we hear nothing about James getting threats, which I hate.
Tracks.
Like, again, yeah, you're totally right.
Me
It's
too.
not that I want him to get death threats. That's not what I'm saying at all. But
Me either.
it feels very unfair. Why is it that, let's take even Myka out of it. Why are your children being attacked to punish you, but not your husband? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I know. And that's why I am glad that we're talking about this documentary, because I do feel like the focus is on Myka, partially because her channel is all about parenting, pregnancy, motherhood, whatever. And James is a part of her channel, but it is not revolving around him. So he's not the main character, and no one's expecting much from him, essentially. It's almost like Myka's calling all of the shots. To me, this is kind of a form of weaponized incompetence where it's like, well, he's just a man. He's just a dad. Like, how much say could he have in this? You know, obviously, she's a failure as a mother, and he's supporting his wife
Yeah.
in her
And
decisions. Even though they're both
again,
full-time content creators who are home all the time.
right? No. And it's so interesting to me that everyone is so brave behind a keyboard. And you have these people expressing concern about this child and worrying about her family, yet you're threatening her family. It doesn't make any sense. And
It's super
they
deranged.
called in allegations of child abuse, and a sheriff's department actually opened an investigation against them, which, as we all, I don't know, we all know, but like we talked about, at least once child services gets involved in your life changes regardless of what the outcome is. It changes.
Right. And whatever scrutiny they were trying to avoid with the Child Protective Service system by not going through their state to adopt, they are now receiving a worse end of it.
Right.
They're getting a lot of scrutiny. They're getting a lot of criticism. They are being investigated. I mean, some people really thought that they killed Huxley, that he was just abandoned somewhere or that he was buried in their backyard. I do think that it was a suspicious set of circumstances and things were not really adding up, and people get into these conspiracy theories and then it becomes the snowball effect. And I think that a lot of times the police, Child Protective Services, I mean, they obviously have to take all of these reports seriously, but these are not really coming from people who know them in real life. But this is also a consequence of being
absolutely.
a family blogger. You're putting it out there.
100%. But with that exact thing, I think people feel entitled to all information. Like, I don't think people recognize that, yes, they're family blogging, and yes, they're putting a lot of their life on the internet, but that's not 24 hours, 7 days a week of their life. It might feel like that. It might feel like you know the family, but you don't.
Right.
So calling in human trafficking allegations is extreme for someone who's like, well, on the internet, I saw this, therefore the children are at danger. Okay, sometimes that's true, absolutely. But again, very brave behind a keyboard for someone who's never actually met the family.
Absolutely. And it's probably wasn't necessary. I would have been shocked, though, if they were not getting death threats and they were not getting reports filed against them, because it was so public and they were so known. And I do think that this is a consequence, but I agree with you. I think that Myka was unfairly blamed for all of this when clearly James was just as much a part of the problem. And even while they were discussing everything, it was all about, well, Myka's tried really hard. Not we've both tried really hard. It's, you know, she tried. Obviously, she's a bad mom, but she tried. And we need to focus on our real kids, is what I got from him anyway.
Yeah.
I never felt like he was as into the adoption stuff, but I think that, I don't know.
Yeah. I do think
I
it's
think that
important.
they wanted a lot of kids for content, for sure. And that was the
Yeah.
whole point.
Yeah. I do think it's important to mention that when the sheriff's office did do the investigation, nothing came back. Like there were no signs of abuse, there was no trafficking indications, the children weren't in any danger that they found or noticed or during their
Right.
interviews. And this is where who was the Twitter person? Maybe I don't want to say her name,
So,
but
oh, I have it. I have it written down. Do we not want to say it?
I don't know because her whole shtick is going after people. So I don't know.
I know.
But
That's true. But I mean, she's someone who calls out influencers online, which we are not. So I'm really
right.
not worried about it. I
That
mean,
is true.
people can call us out all they want also about our opinions about this because I feel pretty confident in my opinion.
Right.
But basically, there's people who troll influencers online and they are not journalists, so they can just post whatever the fuck they want. And that drove criticism up even further for the Stauffers, and it became very viral, and that's why there's even a documentary about it.
Right. And so when they were talking to her about the children getting death threats and her getting attacked, like all of this stuff, and then showing her the police report that nothing was found, she kind of looked disappointed that the police found
Mm,
nothing. And when they asked her, like, "Hey, do you like regret anything?" I agree with her, like, attention, you need to be held accountable for your actions, but I also don't agree with her of like no remorse for the children suffering after the fact. Like you're not just attacking Myka. You're attacking
yeah,
all of this. And I'm like, I would feel
right.
bad. I don't know. I don't really like the way she responded of like, no, I just don't care. That's kind of how it felt. Like,
Sure. I mean, she can't really see them as human beings because she has to detach herself from it in order to do her whole thing. But
right.
also, I think she doesn't feel responsible because she feels like Myka and James are the ones that even expose their children to the world this way. And if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have been in a position to be attacked.
That's
And
true.
so ultimately, it's really their fault and it's not really her fault, which I do agree with. But clearly, her actions led to harm as well. So I think we could all be wrong here and we
Hmm.
could all take some accountability. But I understand because the Stauffers are not taking accountability the way I want them to, that I probably also wouldn't.
Yeah. And then people also were reaching out to the brands. So within pretty much a week,
Mm,
every brand dropped her. They had no more income. Um, Micah did post an apology on Instagram, which was just screenshots of writing. Um,
hmm
and then she was gone. Her social media is
right.
everywhere, gone. Nothing's there anymore. The only thing left is James's channel for the garage. That's up and running. But she was canceled. Like she is the perfect example of the internet will turn on you instantly.
But it is also a decision to stay canceled because Micah could have, not saying it would have been wise or the correct decision to make. I do think that her stepping away was probably what was best in the situation. But if she had just continued to post through this, she possibly could have come out the other side of it because the only way to truly be canceled is to stop producing content. Like no one is actually going to show up and stop you from posting. There's She was not blocked from YouTube. She was not blocked by Instagram. Like she could still make content. Maybe she couldn't have monetized it the way that she wanted to, but she was canceled and she accepted the cancellation.
True.
And I think it was the right call because I don't know that, I mean, her image was forever altered. That's for sure.
I don't think she could have come back though. Like I don't think this is one of those ones that you can just like post
Well,
through.
it depends on what you mean by I mean, she certainly could have posted through, but she would have had to really ride through a lot of death threats and a lot of bad comments. But there's people who are infamous, and there's people who continue to post through it that all they get are hate comments, and that's still engagement. But she only wanted to do it if she was going to be received positively. And that's also understandable, but I just mean, I don't know. I don't know what my point with that is, except that she realized that her image was changed now, and this is not the image that she wants online, and it's hard to deal with scrutiny. So she's left her channel, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, I don't know.
That's what
I
I
think
think anyway.
it's. I don't know. I don't think there's anything she could. I think she was done. I don't think there was any way for her. I mean, maybe in like a couple years she could try to come back, but I can't see the internet allowing her to still be the same type of content, like,
Well,
particularly with
she
how
could have
hard she
produced
got
the content,
attacked.
but she just wouldn't have been able. She wouldn't have been able to monetize the content.
True. Yeah. I guess that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, because
Mm.
Fabletics doesn't want to engage with her, and neither does any of these laundry detergent, none of those brands. But she could have still post, like, if she still had a perspective that she wanted to share, she definitely could. And if she wanted to post through her whole journey of rehoming her child, like, she could have done that. But
Mm.
I think that she knows that it would have been made her look even worse.
Right. It's gonna be
If
bad.
she had nothing to hide, there would be nothing to hide. But there's stuff to hide here because it's a series of bad decisions have led us to this point. And they probably should not have adopted in the first place. They clearly were not prepared for the complexities of the situation. But I think a lot of people get into situations and underestimate how difficult they're going to be
Yeah.
until you're truly living the reality of it. And it's very hard when you're doing it publicly to take something back.
And that's what I think. I think you're right. I think she didn't fully understand what she was doing. I don't think I think it was a rash decision. And I see where some people's perspective if they did it for the views comes from. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, we'll never truly know. It's all going to be speculation at this point because again, they won't comment on it.
Right. And I'm glad that they didn't. It would have been more interesting as a viewer to see the original videos with Huxley in them. They kind of did a weird, like, scribbled over picture of him in all of the videos.
Yeah.
And they also didn't show us him in his new life. They did allude to his new life, saying that he was happy with his new adopted mother. And I really hope that that is true and that that child has peace and safety for the rest of his life. But it feels unfinished. It feels like we don't know, which it's not our right to know, but just for the purposes of a documentary, it left me a little lacking.
I agree. I do think if I was the new adopted mother, I also would be like, no, he's not. He has been monetized enough. He is absolutely not
Oh,
participating.
absolutely.
So like I see
Absolutely.
why he wasn't. Um I do
Me too.
wish
And I
they
also
could
see why
have
the Stauffers didn't want to be in it.
right.
Of course. They've
I
got
wish they
nothing good to
put some
say.
kind of little like tidbit of like, hey, adoptive mother was contacted. Hugsley is doing okay. That I think would have gave that closure you're looking for. Um, but from his perspective and to actually give him privacy, which he never had, to actually follow through with that
Right.
statement, not having him in here was the only option.
Absolutely. Because if they showed his new family, also he would become recognizable again.
Yeah.
um, because he was famous online. But the beauty of being a child is that you're going to grow and you're going to change and you're not going to look exactly the same forever. So if he's living in a new place with new people and he's growing and aging and he's changing, he's not going to be recognizable, especially
Right.
if he's not Huxley anymore, which I don't know if he is or not.
Yeah, I have
But
no
I
idea.
just feel like that's a weird, terrible name anyway. We could call him Hux or we could call him Lee. Yeah, that's just his name.
Yeah,
Like,
great. Thanks.
that's just his name. You call me Mon or you could call me Ika. You could call, you know what I mean? You call
I'm
me
gonna call you
Chris. You call
Ika
me
from now on.
Tall. Yeah, I mean it's a cool nickname for my name.
Oh
Silly. The whole
God, I
thing
hate it.
was silly, and they were very romantic and naive about it, and I, I feel like that happens more than people want to admit. But if you're not dealing with something in the spotlight, you also have more room and more time to figure things out without the scrutiny of the internet. And I think in their situation, having to appear perfect all the time just made it even more difficult for him to adjust and for them to adjust to him.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Feel terrible for him, but I don't know. Hopefully he's in a better spot and is with great people now.
Yeah, I hope so. I think he deserves the world, and I hope he's with someone who is willing to take the time to address the needs that he does have. Um,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that's all true, because we don't know.
True. Yeah, we don't know.
Um, but it was a weird one, and I think this documentary really showed how quickly the internet can turn on you if you give too much of your life. I think you do need to have that boundary where if you look at
Mm-hmm.
certain celebrities, when people do interviews about like their friends and family, they're like, oh, they're a completely different person around us. And I think you have to have a character to the world, and it's really hard it being your real self. And I think this is just the normal person version of that.
Yes, and there's a price to pay for exposing yourself online this way. And that's something that they found out the hard way for sure. And I think that a lot of people experience this and then have to take a step back. This is just an extreme version. But for us, I feel like this was kind of not light because it is an extremely sad topic, but it's different than there's no murder, there's no trial, there's nobody getting arrested, there's no crimes essentially. I mean, as far as presented to us, there's not
Right.
really a crime. It's more of a moral situation and certainly a family dynamic, and there's a lot of complexities with international adoption. And I thought it was really interesting, and she's certainly an infamous mom.
Yes.
But I don't know if they should have been held criminally responsible in any way. Like, I don't know. Some people were saying that they should have been charged for neglect, abandonment, child abuse. I think maybe the duct tape, you could say, was child abuse. But at that point, he was already not in their custody. So I'm not sure. I guess you could be, I don't know if that's actually illegal, just duct taping someone's hands.
Well,
It's not
very easy
nice.
to say, well, the guard was underneath it and it was broken and that's how we got it to stay on. Like there's no proof of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'd be very easy
Sure.
to talk out of. So I agree. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any criminal. I just think it's bad morals, bad people, poor judgment.
Right.
I think that's more of the
Poor
angle.
judgment. Naivete, lack of education, self delusion of grandeur. Like, we'll just be, all a child needs is love, and we'll be able to handle any situation, even though we've never cared for a disabled child in our life, and we don't speak Chinese, and we don't understand the intricacies of adoption and autism and all of these possible symptoms and problems that he's going to have, and attachment issues. And it just doesn't seem, they went into it with very rose colored glasses for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. 100%.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that we got a chance to chit chat about it. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, that was everything. I think it was definitely different. I think you're right. And it'll be interesting if things come out later on about it.
Ooh, yeah. I wonder if she'll ever try again to do something like this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably not.
I guess we'll find out,
But
won't we?
yeah. Well, I'm not going to be watching James's channel, that's for sure.
Oh, God, no. Not really my vibe.
All right. Well, definitely not. Definitely not. All right. Well, until our next mother. We'll talk
Until the
soon.
next one.
Bye.
Bye.